Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to Redefining Leadership, Episode 1. It's a pleasure to have you here. There's around 720 of you joining us live this afternoon around Australia. My name is Colin Tate, and I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Conexus Financial, owners of Professional Planner and Investment Magazine. I'd also like to pay special mention to all those who are currently working the front line around Australia, our healthcare workers, particularly in Victoria. We are in a very troubled world. We have fires being fought on every front of humanity, like no time ever in our living lifetimes. This series has been created to look at what will get us through this period of COVID-19 and beyond into more prosperous times. I say we need to redefine leadership, and we need to look to around the world to a new kind of leadership in business, in politics, in the spiritual world, everywhere you look. We need new leadership. So we're going to redefine that over these next months and hope that that provides you with some comfort at home as you do your work and at work, as you do your work, very important work in the financial industry across financial planning and superannuation. I'm thrilled to have our first guest here. Our first guest is Damien Mu, the CEO of AIA Australia and New Zealand. He employs 3,400 people. He turns over many billions of revenue a year. Remarkably, in 2020, their business is up 9.7%, an outstanding achievement in very difficult circumstances. Most importantly, Damien's business is responsible for ensuring the lives of millions of Australians and New Zealanders. It's my great pleasure to introduce one of the country's youngest large company CEOs. Please welcome Damien Mu. G'day, Damien. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Colin, and great to be here with you.
So let's start, Damien, at the beginning. And my first topic is selfless leadership. I'd like to know a little bit about your ancestry and who in your formative years were the leaders that mattered to you most.
Thanks, Colin. And it's my background. That's an interesting one. I'm obviously born and blessed in Australia, but I come with an interesting background. My mother was Sri Lankan. My father was half Chinese, half Burmese. But as I said, I was born in Aussie. And you talked about leaders. I talk about heroes and angels as well. And there are many that come into your life. And I guess my first real hero and leader that I looked up to but didn't know it at the time was my grandmother, and she was the one who brought us from Sri Lanka to Australia, where I was then born, and she left a pretty affluent life, but she did that in service leadership of our family to give us a better life, and we're all greatly indebted for that. And she came out here and for the next 25 years worked in a factory in Dandenong, and I remember getting up very early in the morning to get the train, and she never asked for anything, Colin, and that was what was so special about it. It was just, she was just committed to what was in the best interest of our family, and she taught me what having a purpose was all about, and I think we were very blessed.
Was that the core of your values, having a purpose and giving to others?
Yeah, look, I think, I was, as I said, I didn't really know it at the time, but I was getting my greatest lessons in leadership through the family environment. There was the three families: my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle, and my mum and my dad. And my mum was my mum. My aunt was, I called her Mim because it sounded like mum. And then I had my grandmother, and it was amazing to see just how having a common purpose, which was, to give our family a better life. Everyone just did what they had to do. And, that wasn't always smooth sailing, but we supported one another. And I got to experience firsthand what people can do when they work together towards a common outcome and put others first. Selfless leadership, as you say.
So you mentioned you're a bit of a bitzer, no real clear papers. You've got Chinese, Burmese, Dutch, Portuguese, Sri Lankan in your bloodstream. When did you first encounter racism, and how did that shape who you are today in terms of your empathy?
Yeah, Colin, it actually taught me a lot. And as I said, I was very blessed to be born and being an Australian, which I'm so proud of, and my kids are too. Um, but it wasn't until 10 years old that I didn't realize I wasn't white, because I had just grown up in Australia with my friends, and everything was great. And I was playing cricket like everyone else, playing football, going to school. And then one day I realized that racism really doesn't is blind, because the friends I was with were making fun of someone else who looked like me, and it was okay to do that. But actually, I just sort of stopped and went, "Hang on a second, that doesn't feel right." And actually, that person looks like me. And so it was at that point in time when I recognized that these things existed. And then on the sporting field, back then it was just accepted. I remember being called very um, challenging names even as a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, but it just was sort of accepted then. And
What
it's
were
just
those
not
names,
right,
Damien?
and it shouldn't be accepted.
What kind of names?
Um, well, Colin, the best part was because I was a bitso, it was a bit confusing for people. So they didn't know whether to call me this, the B word, the dim sim, the, get out of here, it's pretty confronting. But, Colin, I didn't let that get me down at this point in my life. It actually affects me more when I see it happening to others. I actually felt like it was something that, gave me more reason to succeed and to be better, and actually not in a fighting or a negative way. In fact, a way that made me more determined to be accepted for who I was, and to integrate. But I guess, being very open and sharing here, what it taught me was that you need to build a resilience, and that leadership is a privilege and a responsibility. And unfortunately, many leaders whether it's our community, our society, think of it as an authority or a position and abuse it, as opposed to, honoring it. And yeah, but it taught me some great skills, Colin. Right? I mean, I had to learn how to integrate and how to, endear myself to many different parts of society, to be accepted and to succeed in some ways of being accepted. So, but you put that together with some people used to call it, I developed a bit of a knack for a disease to please, and then you combine that with a hard work ethic that I'd learnt, and it was a pretty powerful combination. But it was one that became very tiring, Colin, and actually one that ended up being a core pillar of strength around and a positive of my leadership. It also became a shadow for me in my leadership, because it was actually uh, a tiring pursuit, where you're trying, imagine trying to look to please everyone. You just can't do that. And actually, the only person you're not pleasing is yourself, which is the core pillar of then being a better leader. Because if you can be healthy and well, you can be better for others.
So I can see really that as a wonderful attribute, and what great way of compensating a very hurtful, painful period. But as you also point out, Damien, that then becomes an obstacle, being a people pleaser, or being desperate for people to like you, and running your life as a leader in being that. Um, Unfortunately, Donald Trump doesn't seem to share that. Maybe a little bit of that for him might help. But what did you eventually do to overcome that? That leadership for you is now a balance between being empathetic and caring, and wanting to be appreciated and liked, but at the same time being able to separate that from it is what it is, and I'm the leader, and I didn't need to sometimes make hard decisions and so on.
Yeah, our first thing is actually is back to purpose again, Colin, and having a purpose. And I'm blessed and privileged to have so many wonderful people who share a common purpose around making a difference in people's lives. We are the army of MAD, and we are relentless in that dream of helping people live healthier, longer, better lives. And what I always come back to, you've got to ground yourself in that purpose, right? And when I call it, you have to be enthusiastic, and you have to have big dreams and believe in those dreams. But I think the issue for me was how I overcome that was to um, to acknowledge the feelings I had around it, and to not try and excuse it or feel guilty about it. It wasn't my fault, and not take it on board, which is what I used to do, which was, okay, there must be something wrong with me, or what have I done wrong? I'm different, I'm whatever. And that was very painful, to being able to turn that on to, as I said, moving from that disease to please, to actually being really comfortable in my own skin. And that was about finding out who I was, what my values were, and knowing that I could control what I could control. And that was that, you know what, I was going to go out there with and do the best I could, and be the best person I could be, and do the right thing. And if people didn't like that, then, you know, that wasn't my issue. And so, you know, I developed a bit of a thing, you know. Number one, am I operating from my principles and my values 100% of the time? Not some of the time, 100% of the time. Second thing is, you know, have I done my best? Because that's all you can do in life. And then the third one was, the most difficult one, is to challenge yourself personally. Is this about me or the greater good? And if you can't get a tick on all three of those, and I just do it unconsciously and very quickly, it's just an unconscious checklist, then if you're good on those, then go forth, right? And have the confidence, because, you know, when you're given command, take charge and lead, but do the right thing. So leadership is a privilege and a responsibility. And right now, what we need is decisive, strong leadership, but it's got to be both caring and demanding. You know, I think we've seen enough of the demanding part of leadership. We need the caring element to come through. And so, Colin, how I overcame it was to use it as an energy of, turn that negative energy into a positive energy to drive me, and to rise above it, and to and to make sure I made an absolute genuine commitment to myself to never do better than what was done to me.
So we're going to jump forward a little bit to Leadership Today and Leadership the Future. And in between times, we're going to take audience questions. So there's 720 plus very bright people out there that signed on for this live session. And we've dedicated 15 minutes of the 1 hour directly for you and your questions. So please refresh your browser by pressing F5. Refresh your browser, F5, and you'll see on the right-hand side the place to ask your questions. And our producer of this series and this segment, Lawrence, is sitting here with me in the studio, and we'll cull those questions and put them into some kind of resemblance of order, and we'll be coming to those in just a little bit. If you've just joined this program live or on playback, my name is Colin Tate. I'm the CEO and the founder of Conexus Financial, and we're looking at redefining leadership. Redefining leadership suggests that the leadership we have right now needs something bigger, stronger, better, different in the world that we're in and going forward. In a COVID-19 world, in a world of disrupted global social cohesion, where the social contract arguably around the world is fraying, where the environment is falling off its cliff, where we've got political problems and tensions all around the world, issues of race, and so on and so forth. With that background, my first guest today is Damien Mu, the CEO of Australia and New Zealand for AIA Insurance. AIA is the largest life insurer in Australia and New Zealand and has 3,400 employees. Damien is one of the youngest CEOs in Australia, and he's with me now. We're talking to Damien about his family, and it's going to be quite an intimate, personal conversation. He's in the prep call, has given me permission to go anywhere, and nothing is off limits. We're just talking about race just now and the impact of race, and I just want to stay with that theme for a moment, Damien, because we're a long way from having dealt with race. It's very clear in this country, the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement here, elsewhere around the world, obviously in the United States. Tell us about what happened recently with your daughter. You're married with a couple of children, your daughter in kindergarten.
Yeah, Colin, again, it's never okay, right? There's no justification for any type of racism. It's like you can't, doing the right thing isn't some of the time, it's all the time, right? So I just want to make that clear from my perspective. But I do think that that there is, what you've got to get under the cover on is intent. And, so for me, as I mentioned, I had some incidences growing up, but my daughter...
Just move that mic a little further in front of your mouth, my friend. Just move the mic a little closer to your mouth.
So, Sorry, Colin. Maybe I got a little bit vulnerable there and maybe started mumbling a little bit because you mentioned my daughter Bailey. But yeah, that's the bit where it hit me more, is when my heart broke when my daughter Bailey was 4 and went to kinder, and she came home and she asked why she was brown, and then kept raising this question about why am I darker than mummy? Why am I brown? And we uncovered sadly that this poor innocent other little child at kindergarten had said to Bailey in front of a couple of her friends, don't hold Bailey's hands, she's brown. And that for a 4-year-old is obviously devastating, but for a father was very difficult. That took all my zen to to breathe and relax, because it affected me in a far greater way than anything that happened to me personally. But then, what I did was back to, after having taken a few breaths and taken that on, was, I was actually reflected on my experience and said, you know what, this is life. It's not okay. It's never okay. So I'm never going to explain to Bailey, it's okay, and say, hey, don't worry about it. But what I was okay with is that, it helped me to channel into a positive energy. And so we had the conversation about, what a great moment. That was a great moment for me to be able to help Bailey build a resilience and a positive attitude that will help her later on in life. And so rather than take the angry route, we took the higher ground after I breathed. And we looked at it as a great moment where she learned to love herself. And actually, you know what? We then went to the kindergarten and they were fantastic. And they then actually did a lot of books and a lot of conversations about the differences in people. And I think education is really important on that. We shouldn't just assume everyone gets it.
So let's go with another tough subject, and I'm going to ask you this question, Damien, because it's my view at least that our childhood has so much to do with what forms the basis of our person, our being, and certainly our leadership and who we become as adults. You've already mentioned that you were raised by mostly your grandma, and then there's obviously your mother, and you had a stepfather that was very fundamental in your life. Unfortunately, your biological father disappeared fairly early in your childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And moreover, again, how that impacted you as a leader, and how you're still trying to resolve that matter with your natural dad?
Yeah. So I think, first thing is I was blessed to grow up in a house full of love. My grandmother, my mum, my aunts, man, and they had some fun with me because I was the firstborn, and I was of the grandchildren. I was a boy, and they were very strong women, and they used to dress me up and uh, take photos and have a lot of fun, and it was great. And I just learned so much from them. And then, yes, you're right. My father left very early on. I think I don't even have really any memories of when I was a baby, but he came back into my life, and he went and lived in another country. But my stepfather was really, became my father. And from the time I was sort of 5, he was really the major influence from that perspective in my life. And I didn't know any different. But yeah, how did I deal with it? I guess I felt I didn't. I sort of kept it under the covers for a long time. But the reality was, Colin, I like any kid, I guess you felt rejected and you didn't understand why. But I think the most difficult part for me as a kid, and this is something I would say, is that was the emotional sort of what's the word I'm looking for? But the the tug of war between the two parents. You felt like you were sort of responsible a little bit there. But look, I mean. Actually, again, my real father and I used to get along fine, and then we sort of drifted for a long time. And actually, I just sort of learned to sort of get over that, forgive him, and wish him the best. I just want him to be happy. I wanted him to be happy, others to be happy, and I'd got on with life. And yeah, but at the time, it was one of rejection. But it didn't, I didn't really express it that way. And yeah, you sort of felt like you were, emotionally sort of caught up in a bit of a tug of war for a while there.
We've got so many questions here. We're not going to get through most of them, and I've got plenty coming from the audience as well. But let me ask you one more on your history before we move into the the section on you now as a leader, and I want to spend plenty of time on the future and how that can look and leave some positive messages with this audience. So I'm gonna have to drop a couple of questions that we talked about the other day, unfortunately, but I really want to know about the age gap between yourself and your siblings. There was, you know, 10 years younger as your sister, and 16 years younger than that, you have twin brothers. So I imagine you're almost like an uncle or a father figure for your own siblings, especially your brothers. Again, did that have you mature beyond your years? You know, what was the impact to you as a leader? Again, you're the youngest ever CEO of a top 100 company. So I'm just wondering if that had an interplay.
I'm not sure that is correct or not, but the what I would say is, you know, yes. So growing up in a family with a very close family, but a number of families living together and therefore being together very closely, I grew up with a lot of my uncles and aunts who were really like my friends who were older than me. So, but also, you know. We were really lucky, but as I said, my stepdad was like one of my heroes. Right? My mum was as well. They all worked really hard. My stepdad would do a cleaning job in the morning, work during the day, and then study at night. And, you know, so sometimes I'd be in primary school going to school, but, you know, he'd have to wake me up and take me cleaning with him to get the job done in time. And then I would cry and, you know, be all upset that I had to go along and do these things. But, you know, you sort of got into, you got some lessons pretty early in life about the importance of responsibility, work, you know, taking on accountability for, you know, doing things like a job, and then growing up with those people. But yes, then when there was myself, and then of course, you know, there was a big gap between myself and my sister because my parents got on and had to sort of earn a living and financially set themselves up. And 10 years later, Kirsty came along, and she was awesome. But yes, she was. I just, you know, had someone to pour out a lot of love on and look after, and it was great. But you're right. I took a very different relationship on with her, and then my brothers, who are hugely talented, they're still at home with my mum. They're never leaving. They got it too good, and they're 16 years younger. But it felt more like uncle relationships, parent relationships than actually a brother relationship, if that makes sense. But I'm so proud of them, and they're awesome.
Great answer, and you give great answers. But I'm going to speed this up because we've got so much to get through. We need 2 hours with you, maybe not one. But look, let's move on to your current role as leader today, and in particular, do you remember your first ever major decision when you became CEO?
Oh my gosh, Colin, there's so many decisions you have to make, major decisions. I think the first major decision, what was it? Well, yeah, probably, you know, first major decision was one you didn't even share with anyone. It was a question you ask yourself, you know, what leader am I going to be? You know, and I think I actually want to stop on that for a second, Colin, because I think this is part of the issue is leadership is a phenomenal word, isn't it? You know, and we love words, but words are very powerful. And what we need to do is really define what do those words mean and interpret them for people. So for me, as I said, leadership at that point in time, I had to make a decision. Was leadership really about this power or authority that I was going to get to, you know, have some fun and, you know, do cool things? And I don't mean it like that. I'm not being literal. But
Sometimes.
was it, yeah, we have fun and we do some cool things. I know, but you know what I mean? The question I had to ask myself, or was it actually going to be this privilege and responsibility that I thought leadership was, and was I going to honor that, and how was I going to manifest myself in terms of that leadership, because it has impact on people, right? I always talk to people about it. I'll give you an example. When you're a team leader, I remember being, you know, my first job was in the mailroom at Colonial, and then I got the opportunity to be a senior where a couple of people reported to me, and I was like, wow, do you know the responsibility you take on? You could shape that person's life, whether you give them the confidence because of the way you talk to them, whether they get the little promotion or the opportunity to go for another job. These are fundamentally, might seem little, but they're massive building blocks for their future of the person's confidence, their family outcomes. So, you know, the major decision I made, Colin, was that I was going to do my best to honor leadership as a responsibility and a privilege.
And would you say you're into the micro, the macro? Are you a fun leader? Are you a serious leader? Or do you encompass all of those things?
Colin, I think we leaders today need to be able to move right through that spectrum. I think the most important thing is also recognizing that you make many decisions that you get wrong. But what I try to do is declare my intent. And as I said, I sort of have that compass of those three things: values and principles. Have I done my best? And is it about me or the greater good? Because you need to be able to make decisive leadership in a world that's changing constantly, like what we're seeing now, is really important. But caring and demanding is as well. So for me, I would say I'm more of a field marshal than a ivory tower leader. I just love getting amongst it.
What was your first big mistake when you became CEO? Do you remember? The one you
I
wish
could do it all.
no one never knew about, or maybe they still don't, or the one that you really wish you could rewind?
Oh no, I don't. I don't think you rewind mistakes. I mean, there's things I regret in my life naturally, but I try to learn from them. Bringing reflection into my life has probably been the biggest tool as a leader that I've been having, because it can be pretty lonely, and you get lots of help from lots of heroes or angels, mentors, bosses that come along in your life. But the most important one is also to be able to have a reflection capability and a reflection skill. But the biggest one I probably made was Colin thinking that I was Superman and I could do it all. And that I could run at 150 miles forever and never get tired, and I didn't need any, I could do it all myself if I had to. What a mistake.
What a mistake. What a mistake. So there's 3,400 people that you lead. I can't get my head around that. That's such an extraordinary large number of people. What are your guiding principles when it comes to leading them? And if I were to check in with the senior people at AIA, how would they categorize you as a leader?
Oh, you'll have to ask them. What I will tell you is I try to have a purpose-led leadership style, which is to help people to, help us to rally around a purpose and a dream. And our purpose is to make a difference in people's lives, and we really rally around being part of the Army of Mad. And I'm a member of that. And a dream of champion Australia and New Zealand to be the healthiest nations in the world, and to have the dream of a healthier, longer, better life. I think people would say I run hard. I've got that. I do create a very inspiring sort of vision at times, but sometimes I can run too fast. And so what I've been trying to do is live life slower and make sure that the excitement that I can hopefully create around that dream, people are still all the way on the journey with me, and that I'm sure it's not my dream, it's our dream. That's the important part. But what they will tell you is I try to bring in an element of both caring and demanding. And so, Colin, I have on my wall, sort of reminders, and I keep the Spartan code with me, and I keep the Native American Ten Commandments code. And that's really how I define purpose-led leadership at AIA. We try to be caring and demanding. We want to care for one another, care for our community, lead with respect and honor, but also, if we are serious about our dream and our purpose, we've got to demand more of ourselves to be continually improve and, give our best and not get complacent. So it's bringing those two together. But hopefully they tell you that I'm with them shoulder to shoulder. That's what I'd love them, that I walk the talk and I'm shoulder to shoulder. That would be nice.
And who do you talk to? Who do you take counsel from outside your subordinates at AIA, given that it's lonely being a CEO?
So what I mean, it can be lonely, but actually that's because sometimes when I say responsibility and privilege, the responsibility does ultimately lie with you to make those tough calls or make decisions when it needs to be made. So that can be lonely, but actually I take advice from everyone. One of the great things I've learned is the power of presence. And so I can have a 30-second, if I can be present in a 30-second lift ride with one of my team or a stranger, I can get some great advice. It's amazing, right? It's everywhere, and lessons and heroes and angels are everywhere. You just got to be open to it. But I have a great network around me, whether it's my colleagues here, whether it's friends like, Colin, I'd classify you as a friend. I get advice for you. You pulled me aside and said, "Hey, buddy, you need to slow down. We need you to be well and look after yourself because you've got a long road we need. And so I take that counsel on board and I'm like, okay, cool. An angel came to me, gave me a message. I'm not going to be some arrogant idiot who just goes, oh, whatever. And think, I've got, Bill, my regional chief executive, he picks up the phone and checks in with me and gives me those little nudges and those prompts and that hug when I need it and the kick when I need it. My mum, she still rings me and tells me what to do. And Bailey and Kai, my 9-year-old and 6-year-old, they definitely tell me what to do.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to go to questions from the audience in a moment, and then we're going to spend the last 15 minutes of this hour looking at the future and what kind of world we want to create, what kind of world we want to step into, and the leaders of the future, what characteristics they may require. But a couple of questions, I think, super critical questions, Damien, that I'd like to track before we go there. How have you been coping with stress? I gather that's going to include things like family. It's going to include exercise. And also on our prep call, you told me that you like to cry a lot.
Thank you, Colin. I do like a good cry. I think it's very therapeutic and I'm very happy to admit it. In fact, sometimes I watch emotional moments on America's Got Talent or Australian Idol or whatever it might be, or Golden Buzzer moments, and the tears just flow because actually, you know what? I'm inspired by people who have a dream, who have the belief in that dream no matter what everyone's told them, who, take the small or big step to take a chance and then get on with the work to see that dream through. And, I sometimes send it around to some of the team as well and then, share the crying. But what have I been doing, Colin? I've been 2 or 3 things really quickly. One, absolutely working on keeping up my physical exercise. I need that. That's a form of both physical and mental well-being for me. So keeping up my physical exercise, running, etc. 2, setting little challenges along the way. 3, connecting with people through the forms of communication we have now, and that is, just doing little Teams drop-in or Zoom drop-ins, and not talking about work. Having little things like, a joke off on the camera with a colleague. But Colin, I've been living life a lot slower. And I've fallen in love with nature. I didn't know there were all these trees in Victoria. I didn't know there was this sky. I'm serious, and I've been cooking cookies with Bailey, going on a bike ride with the family. Oh my gosh, these are things that have just been immensely beautiful gifts that I unfortunately, I don't want to get melancholy because then I'll get upset thinking I've lived a very busy life. And COVID has also given me a chance to live life a bit slower, even though I'm working amazing hours through Zoom. There's been times where I can't now on the weekend go and do other things. So guess what? We're having family time.
Good for you. Well, we're going to roll into some questions from the audience. And Damien, you'll be the humble guy that you are. You'll be shocked by this, but we have over 700 people live online, and we already have around 30 something, 35 questions for you. And that's after we've screened out the ones that, no, we haven't screened out anything. They've all been intelligent, great, and respectful questions. But can I ask the first question from me?
Of course.
So I was in preparing for this. I remembered an incident which I think was circa 15 years ago when I decided I want to make Damien Mu my friend. I thought, wow, what a cool guy. And do you remember? You've got no idea, I'm sure, because we've never discussed it. And he's now worried. And the moment was we were at the FFC, the Financial Services Council conference, of which you're now a director. I think you weren't CEO yet of AIA. You were probably sneaking into the CEO cocktails incognito as the number 2 or the general manager or somebody at the time of AIA. And I was there in my role as a publisher and media guy, and we'd become friends in that recent period. And there must have been, I don't know, 1,200 people at the conference. There was about 80 people in the CEO cocktails. 90% of them were men. Most of them were heterosexual men. I was one of the few gay men, and one of the few gay men in the industry that had a profile and was quite out and comfortable with that. You came darting across that cocktails, and, amongst a bunch of your other colleagues and friends, came up to me, gave me a big hug and a kiss, and started chatting. And I thought in that moment how cool, and I don't think anyone probably took any notice or made any judgments, but to this day, I've always thought highly of you and thought, wow, what does it take for a heterosexual male CEO to have that kind of comfortability in their masculinity, presumably in their sexuality, and also be so unself-conscious, which would enable you to be present. But anyway, the good news for you, perhaps, or the bad news, is that that's when I made my decision to make you my friend. I'm just interested, though, in what had you be so comfortable in your own skin at that time, and what does that have to do with the kind of leader that you are, that you don't give time up for looking good or self-consciousness, and you are comfortable with your masculinity and your sexuality?
Well, that's a big question. One, firstly, thank you for making that decision, because I've cherished our friendship and the challenges and the hugs and the laughs and the tears. I think, Colin, I guess it goes back to what you said in childhood. I don't see anything, but I see good and love, right? I don't want to, and if people can't be comfortable with that, bad luck. You know what? Do the right thing. It's not some of the time, it's all the time. And you know what? I love giving hugs, and you were happy to receive one, so you were getting one. And I don't really care what anyone else thought. You know why? That's their issue. I'm not hurting them. I love everyone, right? I respect everyone. And so, I do remember it actually, Colin. You know why? Because I think it was important that you felt comfortable in that room, and others got a lesson. Because you know what leadership needs? It needs not just a head or just a heart, it needs a head and a heart. And, we need to be comfortable in showing both sides. It isn't always about, sometimes it's important to have that intelligence and that, bring the head to the rational side of things. And other times in leadership, it's important to bring the heart to it. And you know what? That moment required a heart.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that moment, and thanks for the friendship, and thanks for that answer just now. And if you've just tuned in, you're listening to Redefining Leadership, Episode 1, with Damien Mu, the CEO of Australia and New Zealand for AIA Insurance. We're now moving to audience questions, of which we're going to have way too many to be able to respond to. But respectfully, we'll give this session 15 minutes thereabouts. Try and give us some quick answers, Damien. And what we might do, given there's so many questions, is we'll keep all the questions that we can't get to answering, and we'll send them through to you, Damien. And we'll either get your private answers from Damien, or we'll publish responses on Investment Magazine online and Professional Planner online. The first question I have for you is from Brendan Casey, who was with Rest Super. How do you balance, at times, the competing dynamic of delivering business outcomes whilst caring for your team?
Thanks, Brendan. Great question. Yeah, it is a challenge, but that's where I think it's about bringing it into your consciousness, right? And getting a very clear understanding of, I guess for me, the way it ladders up, or the hierarchy. And, so we've got at AIA what we called, when COVID came along, within the first 2 weeks, we developed our COVID response plan, as any good leadership team would, and task force together. And we called it Survive, Revive, Thrive. And the three elements of that were recognizing that the first important thing was our staff engagement and well-being, because without the team, we couldn't get to the second one, because it's all about our people. The second one was about our business continuity and how we were going to continue to provide the essential services to Australians and their New Zealanders, their families, when they needed it most. And then the third one was the exciting part about reimagining life. But what we wanted to do was connect that plan to the feeling and the emotion, which is actually right now, people are just thinking about survival, right? So we need to help people survive and give them clarity and certainty. So before we think about reviving, and we're going to be in revive for a long time before we move to thrive, which is where we get to reimagine some fun stuff and come forward to life. But there is, the business results and the people component are just completely interdependent. So that doesn't mean that you're not making some difficult decisions around people, right? This is not just as I said, it's the care and the demanding, and we need to make sure that we're supporting our people to be the best that they can be, and making sure that they are well first and supported. But sometimes, there are decisions around people that need to be made where it may not be the right fit, the right role, the right values connection, and you've got to make those decisions. Because that too will impact business results just as quickly as not caring for your team. So people first, and that's about making the right decisions, whatever they may be.
All right, let's play hard quiz now. We're going to have some really fast questions with some really fast answers, if you can. We've got Cecilia Storninado. I'm sorry, I mispronounced your last name.
Yeah, I know Cecilia.
There you go. It's asking, what is your view on why there are no female life company CEOs in Australia?
So that's a great question. I think, we have had some great female CEOs and leaders in life insurance who are good friends of mine. And we do actually, because Megan Beer was the CEO of AMP Life and now the CEO of Resolution Life, a good friend. But we had Deanne Stewart, who left MetLife as CEO to go on to become the First State CEO. And Helen Troop, who was CEO of CommInsure and another good friend of mine, and previously CEO of Swiss Re. But obviously when we merged, I acquired CommInsure, and I ended up taking over from there. But when I look at it, I don't have a specific answer. What we've had is, our chair of our board is Teresa Gattung. We've got 50% representation or 60% on the board. The executive team previously was 60%. Now we've got a merged team, so we're still working through that. Our AIA New Zealand executive team is 60%. And so hopefully that means that there'll be future women who come into those roles. But I've seen some fantastic women CEOs of life insurance companies, and they've been exactly what we've just described about leadership, having both the head and the heart.
Next question for you, Damien. How do you help aspiring leaders develop the depth of skills that you have as a strong leader?
So I think what I like to do is think of things in terms of there's knowledge and experience come together to inform your intuition, which gives you your wisdom. So I like experiential learning. So what I like to do is help people to have, yes, let's do all the great courses we can and so on, but really get into experiential learning. So we have things like the CEO think tank, where people come together and get opportunities to work on business problems in cross-functional teams and get the experience they otherwise wouldn't, but also putting people into different experiences in the work environment that may not be their full-time job, so they can grow that knowledge, but also experience it, which is where I think it comes together. So, as I said, though, developing a reflective learning, because there's those things others can do for you, but what you can do for yourself is just as important, and taking ownership for your own outcomes. I always tell my team, it's really incumbent on AIA and the executive team and myself to create the most conducive environment for you to be successful, but never outsource your happiness, your career, your development entirely to anyone else. You've got to do the things that are in your control as well. So, as I said before, one of my big ones is building in a reflection skill, and really going through and thinking about what I learned and how and what I want to bring forward from those experiences into the future.
Please keep asking your questions, ladies and gentlemen, and refresh your page if you need to. The box is on the right-hand side. Please provide your name and organisation also. We are going to prioritise asking questions where it's not anonymous. So please give your name and organisation. And for those questions that we run out of time to answer and deal with today, we'll keep a record of them. And Damien, are you happy to answer those? And we'll get back to publish those answers in due course.
Absolutely. But I've got to ask a question, Colin. Surely the biggest question is, what's going on with his hair, and what was that email? What was the computer graphic image that Colin put on the email that went out that looked like I had some good spray on happening?
Yeah, okay, we're going to pass on those two questions. We've got too many substantial questions to deal with. Graham Russell, the CEO of Media Super, has asked Damien, how is it that we can embrace leaders from immigrant backgrounds? That includes premiers, he's listed here in Queensland and New South Wales right now, but not similarly embrace leaders in Australia's First Nations. What can we do to open our eyes to the 60,000 years of rich cultural history that is right here before our very eyes. Thank you, Graham Russell, CEO of Media Super, for that question. Damien?
Yeah, Graham. It's what a fantastic question, and a challenging one to be able to answer, in the sense of we need to do more, and we need to continue to look at what programs we have for our own, in our own backyard, as opposed to always also looking in other backyards. And right now, as you say, what we have is a phenomenal culture and history that we can bring forward. Because you're right, I've spent time looking at different forms of leadership, and one of the ones from our Indigenous community around care within the community, and how they look out for one another and how they play roles to support one another. And I think there's lots of roles we can bring into, lots of lessons we can bring into leadership here, which is about, as I mentioned, a community spirit, working together towards a common outcome. But I think, we've got to continue to make sure that I think sometimes what happens, unintentionally, we get a bit complacent. We put a few programs in place and think, oh, great, those programs will take care of themselves. It's like anything. When we plant the seeds, we've got to continue watering them and nurturing them, and making sure they grow. And so I think we need to continue to make sure that we're looking at what we can do to embrace that. But for me, diversity and inclusion is a non-negotiable. In fact, it's one of our belief systems here, that we cannot be successful on our dream and our purpose if we don't embrace diversity and inclusion.
I'm going to ask an anonymous question here because it's such a special question, but please, in future, everyone, give us your real name and organisation. Hi, Damien. I've always been inspired by your vulnerability. Question is about when leading when tough decisions need to be made. The insurance industry is facing some very tough times, economically and politically. How do you lead your teams through tough decisions like premium increases?
Yeah, it is not easy, and you've got to actually go back and I think the most important part is acknowledging and taking the lessons of what has gone on, to be able to understand what did we do that maybe we could have done better, but also how do we do this in a way that is demonstrating the care and empathy that needs to be placed. So I think, vulnerability is absolutely right. We've got this thing going on across AIA right now, where we talk about the two words to describe how we're feeling, because the first word we normally say is good, and then we move on. But actually, the two words I put down today at the start of the day were vulnerable and hopeful. And I think being vulnerable is a really important feeling to acknowledge and embrace, because it helps you to make good decisions and helps you to get beneath the head and down into the other parts of your value system around your heart, your gut, to be able to help you inform it. So what do I do around premium increases? What we do is look at it and go, right, this was the claims experience, but what did we do around potentially the product designs that we have, the programs we have to help people get back to work, get healthy again, and how do we design these into the future to try and minimize that, and then also go out with other offers to support people rather than just cancelling their cover because the premiums have gone up. But I think if we're specifically asking around what we've seen in the insurance market, disability income benefits has not been positive. I mean, the increases across the market have been year on year in line with the experience, and now we're at an important juncture where we have to acknowledge and be vulnerable and acknowledge our responsibility of what we did unintentionally, maybe, to design those products to serve a need, but have not got it right, and therefore has resulted in premium increases. So I think it's about balancing those out and making sure we have other options for our customers to be able to not just go out with an increase, but other options that they can take up as well.
We've got only around 10 minutes left, can you believe it? We're already 50 minutes into this program, and again, many questions left over that we will come back to you all after Damien answers them privately. Damien, one last question, which may leave us a little bit sad, but then we've got three very uplifting questions to close out on about the future. When we were prepping for this call, you described that you've been mourning, grieving, in fact, was the word you used, for the COVID-19 experience, so the environment that we've been in for the last 4 or 5 months, and you use the word grieving. What have you been grieving that we've lost, and what are you missing or thinking that may never return? But also maybe on the flip side of that, what are the silver linings? What do you think is the new world order that could be very positive and constructive on the other side of this.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. I think they're right. They are connected. And I think we are collectively grieving because, we were living a life that we had, and then suddenly that life was changed overnight, and due it, we lost things like some of our freedom to be able to go out and do certain things, to travel, to whatever, those easy things to identify. But actually part of it is also grieving. I'll share this very openly. Grieving the past and a very busy life that maybe, I woke up and go, wow, did I get all of that right? Could I have
So you're
lived
actually
life a little bit
grieving that you might
slower?
have screwed up a lot about the way you were living your life and wasted some
Not,
time and
not,
kind of done a lot of things on autopilot and remote. And so it's kind of like, why was I wasting time like that versus a slower, quieter,
yeah,
more sensible life that you've now discovered by default? Is that what we're saying?
partly, Colin. Yeah, you may be describing it differently. I don't sort of think of it like in those some of those terms. I think of it as, wow, maybe I could have lived life a little bit slower. Maybe I didn't need to do 150 flights a year. Maybe I didn't need to do all those meetings. Maybe I could have gone home and spent a bit more time with the family. Maybe I could have taken better care of myself. Maybe I could have used my five senses to do more than look at a screen, touch a keypad, listen to a phone call. Maybe I could have gone out to nature and seen some beautiful trees, touched the
Lucky you're so
grass.
young and can still
Um,
do all that stuff, huh? Lucky you're so
yeah,
young
but
and you
that's
can
why
still do
this.
all that stuff.
Well, you're never too old, Colin. That's just a number thing. Life is about the next moment, right? So I don't sit there and wallow. What I acknowledge is that I was grieving something. What was I grieving? I was grieving that I wasn't taking and appreciating certain things in my life that were there, right in front of me, and before. And now I've got a chance to, as you say, silver lining, take that forward. So, you know what? I'm not going to go back to 150 flights a year. I will travel a lot for work, and I will travel to see the world, but I'm not going to do 150 flights a year. I'm going to take it a little bit easy, and I'm going to be more effective in doing so and have better impact. I'm going to continue to cook more with Bailey because she's creative and she loves it. My little backpack. She's my daughter who's 9. And Kai, we're going to continue doing Ninja Warrior course in the backyard and getting his 6-year-old energy out there and create great memories together. And I'm going to get up and have an attitude of gratitude for what I have every day. Because you know what? Even in stage 3 lockdown in Victoria, I can still go for a walk. I have my health. I have 3,400 amazing people across the army of MAD and AIA. And I'm part of the AIA group, which has 20,000 amazing family members who are all committed to healthier, longer, better lives.
So what excites you now about the future? We've talked a few of those things just now, but working from home, digital communication, having potentially more geographic and ethnic workforces in Australia and around the world. I mean, I'd throw those out as some of the things that might be things to be excited about after we move through this COVID period, which is presumably going to be another couple of years, let's be honest. What excites you, Damien? Those things and more, maybe?
Colin, I'm not someone who needs a lot to get excited. As you know, I'm always passionate and excited. So I'm trying to just curb my enthusiasm a little bit. But the reality is there's many things, Colin. So I think for the first time, let me start at a macro level. Despite what we might want to say about leadership and whether it's good or bad around the globe, we have, for the first time, humans are me, we, right? We are coming together collectively to, in a fight for healthier, longer, better lives, to take on and be together as one on that. And you know what? We'll do that without leadership if we have to. So that's been a great thing. It's been great to see, even today, going out for a walk and seeing Victorians wearing their masks, not because they want to wear a mask because it's comfortable and looks good, it's because they're doing it for the collective. So what a beautiful thing that we can bring forward, put some of our differences aside and come together as a collective. I'm excited about what that affords. I'm excited about the future ways of working, but I will caution this: survive, revive, thrive. We cannot get caught up in the euphoria of a moment and think that this is the new norm. The new norm, to your point, Colin, is not there yet. We're still going to be in the revive stage for a while, right? I mean, the novelty of working from home quickly drained for many. Okay, it went from being, oh, this is cool, to actually, I need some connection. I need to be able to see people. While I don't want to be in the office full time, I still need to be able to connect. I would like to get there some days of the week. So I think one of the most exciting opportunities is to redesign and reimagine the future of work and how we create more empowerment, more engagement, more flexibility for people. But I do want us to think about doing that in a considered manner so that we can provide a sustainable future way of working, not just, I think, as I said to you, human behavior, we jump at the first bit of candy and then we go, oh, sorry, that doesn't work, and we take it away. That would be really disappointing. How do we just, go slow to go fast? And that's coming from me. But I think that's one of the most exciting things.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, this last 58 minutes, Damien, and as you being our first guinea pig guest on this program to try and make a difference and having people think differently and redefining leadership, rethinking leadership, if you like. I guess my summation, it sounds like, would be maybe more empathy, maybe compassion, maybe vulnerability, maybe looking forward to all kinds of new futures that we hadn't expected and hadn't prepared for. Are there any other items you'd like to add to that laundry list of what redefining leadership may look like from your perspective and how you'd like to guide the next generation of leaders much younger than even your young self?
Yeah, look, I think it has to be authentic, and everyone needs to be their own special self in bringing that leadership to life, right? It's not about being Colin, Damien, or anyone else. It's about being the best leader they can be, coming from their own sense of heart, head, etc. But what I would say is, you missed a very important word there, Colin, which is it's don't be fearful to say the word love. Loving people, love for others is a good thing, right? Having a leadership that loves rather than hates is what we need right now, right? And love is not weakness. People think, oh, that's not. No, remember, caring and demanding, right? Love is about being caring and demanding. Love is about making the tough decisions when they need to be made, but it's showing the compassion when it needs to be made. So I would just say I would want people to dream big around being relentlessly hopeful, okay? Hope is optimism grounded in truth and fact, and my hope is that we can bring forward a genuine care for one another, our community, our world, to make it a better place. And I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to continue to live my life that way.
Well, I can see you in politics and many other places one day, perhaps post the world of financial services and AIA and insurance. But have you? You're probably too young to think about retirement or even legacies. But have you?
Oh, I just actually, Colin, one of the things I've been said, John Kerwin, who's a friend and we partnered with on Mentor Me, he said, don't get distracted by the lion in the bushes while you're eating the grass. So really what I'm trying to say is right now I'm just focused on doing the best I can and to fulfill and honor the privilege and responsibility I have as a leader, as a father, as a son, as a husband, as a friend. I just want to be the best I can be right now and focus on that and, trust that the rest of it will take care of itself. But I'm hoping we leave a great legacy for many generations to come by helping Australians and New Zealanders to make small steps around their health and well-being that will be enduring, right? That's wow. If we can just repurpose people around the dream of a healthier, longer, better life by just pushing it the first 10 meters, and the rest of the world can come along and push it over the line, I'm happy with that.
So I'll leave Damien on the screen for the rest of this closeout. Thanks, our director, Ben. I just want you to hear a couple of things here, Damien. First of all, thank you so much for your generosity. Thanks for your always, empowering and supportive, enlightening spirit. Your encouragement is amazing across not just your workforce, but your leadership in the industry, and to the many friends of which I call myself one, and I'm proud to be so. We have so many unanswered questions, but we'll get those questions to you and get those responded. Believe it or not, we are out of time. For those who would like to hear more from Damien Mu, very soon with Conexus Financial, once again, we are holding our annual Group Insurance Summit. That will be in digital format. You can see the dates in front of you. It's going to be 18 August from 9 a.m. till midday. And again, later in the year on November 12, Damien will feature on that first session on 18 August. So please join us for that. The next episode of Redefining Leadership, and I hope you've been left inspired out of today with perhaps at least a feeling that not all is lost. There are leaders out there who are powerful and trying to make a difference in this very, very confusing, messed up and confronting world. Not just COVID-19, that's kind of like now become the tip of the iceberg. The economic issues, the social unrest, the distress all around the world, the unemployment levels. There's so many things to contend with. And you need to be a superhuman, I would argue, in any sphere to actually be a leader. But we're going to try and uncover some of those special leadership qualities of what the future leader may look like. And I think Damien has shared some of those today, and hopefully they will resonate with you, and hopefully the hour you've just spent with us now has been a good investment of your time. Our next episode, this is available to you on playback. It's complimentary, free of charge, on the Professional Planner website or on the Investment Magazine website. You, your family, your friends, your work colleagues can play this back, listen, pass it around. Please share it, and it's free. Further to that, our next episode, you'll be pleased to know, Damien, is actually David Gonski. David Gonski will join us for an hour on the 25th of August at 4:30 p.m. There's a slide up in front of you now. Stewardship in a Crisis. David Gonski, a household name across Australia, and he will join us again, a free episode. And then we have many special guests between now and the end of the year. The program is all set. It includes people like Shane Fitzsimmons, who ran the fire effort as the Commissioner of New South Wales Fire throughout the worst fire season over the summer just past here in New South Wales. Shane will be joining us on this series. We have Kerry Kennedy joining us on this series. The Bobby Kennedy, his daughter and president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Foundation. She'll be joining us for an interactive session like this just before the US election to discuss the Trump-Biden election, but more importantly, the race issues and the tensions and social unrest in the United States right now and around the world, and what we can do about that. We have Dr. Vivian Ming, one of the most crazy intelligent people I've ever met. She's a global leader in artificial intelligence, has an investment in 7 different businesses in Silicon Valley, has a PhD, teaches at a couple of universities, and a super fascinating human being. She will also be joining us. And we also have Professor Nordhaus joining us. Professor Nordhaus is the only human in the world to have received a Nobel laureate for climate science. I'm hoping that now we've dealt with COVID-19, maybe one of the next challenges in the world will be to listen to the scientists on climate, and we'll be chatting to him also. He's from Yale University. There's just a few teasers of what's coming up. Damien, thank you so much. Did you enjoy that session?
Yeah, Colin, thank you so much. Very humbled to be asked to be a part of it, and happy to do so, and I hope I've given some little rays of hope to people. But I just wanted to congratulate you personally for putting on this series for people to be able to listen in and hopefully get some what I call food for the soul from others around their leadership, and to Conexus for putting us on. So congratulations, because that is great leadership with great empathy. And here's a little picture for you. These are my little ones. That's Bailey.
Oh,
that's Kai. Yeah, there they are.
Kai, we can't see Kai. Move Kai in. Bring Kai up again.
Yeah, there's Kai. He's my little man.
Where's your wife, Simone? Where's the picture of Simone? Your wife doesn't get a look in?
Yeah, of course.
On that note, we're actually 3 or 4 minutes over time, which is not recommended. We should be running these to exactly 1 hour. Damien, thank you. I appreciate your time and your generosity, and thanks for being part of this. So thanks to Damien Mu. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, as CEO and founder of Conexus Financial, my name is Colin Tate. This is Redefining Leadership, Episode 1, Ensuring Dignity. I look forward to seeing you next time in August. Thanks for supporting our business, and most importantly, keep safe and well. Thank you, and good afternoon.